Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 124. Elementary, Dear Data.
Good day, fine people of the internet, and welcome into another rousing adventure, the audio play we call Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Donning the role of host, I humbly submit myself, John Champion.
And I, perhaps the only foil who could best Mr. Champion, also acting as host, Professor Ken Ray. And I should warn you, I've disabled the failsafe protocols for this episode. Listen at your peril.
We meet again, Professor Ray. For the first time, for the last time, again we meet. Again. Today, elementary, dear Data.
And before we get to that, we would love to have you contact us, please. Many ways you can do that. Facebook, Skype, and Twitter, where the handle is MissionLogPod. You can call us at 323-522-5641. You can email us, missionlog@roddenberry.com. Any information that you send to us should please include your address, your social security number, any other pertinent information about you. I won't do anything bad with it, I swear. Also, you can check out our website. That would be fantastic. We have discovered documents there and all kinds of other fun stuff. missionlogpodcast.com. And we have two other places that we would like for you to check out online. trekmovie.com carries Mission Log, which we are very happy about, and Trek FM, which you can find at trek.fm. I don't remember if I mentioned we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log, but again, all that personal information, we're not going to do anything, nefarious or evil or bad with it or anything.
Is that all it takes, Ken, to unleash a nefarious plan? You just say, give me this. Don't worry, you won't do anything wrong with it.
I think so. Yeah, it occurs to me as the further we go into this, I would probably make a terrible criminal mastermind.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. No argument at all.
If you tell the plan, you would be a terrible criminal.
I totally hid the plan. I didn't tell people what I was going to do with their personal information. I just asked for it, please. Well, with which did. I am going to do nothing. I think I've been very upfront about my plan as far as people know. I'll tell you what. I'm going to work on my evil plan.
Okay.
While you work on educating people on the trivia stuff.
Jolly good. All right. Today's episode, Elementary Dear Data, was written by Brian Allen Lane. It was directed by Rob Bowman, and it was nominated for 2 Emmys, one for art direction and one for costuming. I think well-deserved on both of those. Now, Ken, you know that I've had fun since we started Mission Log talking about the other ships that we encounter in Mission Log, some of them with real-life counterparts. And of course, in this one, we talk about the Starship Victory, but we also talk about, and we see a model of the HMS Victory. The HMS Victory was launched in 1765. It was, of course, Lord Admiral Nelson's ship. And the most important battle that the HMS Victory saw was the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. At that battle, the Royal Navy, numbering about 27 ships, held off the French and Spanish navies, numbering 33 ships, in a decisive victory. And Nelson was shot and died late in the afternoon of October 21st during the battle. But of course, the Brits were victorious. Now, the victory itself was restored many times over, and to this day, it is the oldest commissioned naval ship. She sits in dry dock in Portsmouth, England.
Wait a minute. The UK's oldest commissioned naval ship or the world's? Because isn't the Constitution still technically a commissioned ship?
Well, it's interesting. Yes, the Constitution is a commissioned ship, though she is younger and she is floating. Now, the Victory is an older ship, and she is in dry dock. So there is a little bit of sway given there as to who can actually claim rights to be the oldest this or the oldest that.
Yeah, because the Constitution isn't just floating. They actually, I used to work in the Charlestown Navy Yard. Mm-hmm. Honestly, luckiest job ever. I think it was my first real radio job, and I ended up going up to becoming operations director of that station. And so my office, my first office, my only actual office that I've ever had a view of the Charlestown Navy Yard.
Cool.
And it was one of the anniversaries of the Constitution. So they were running it back and forth like a water taxi. I mean, it was just constantly in and out and in and out of the harbor. So, yeah, none of this dry dock shenanigans. I'm just saying, it's not just floating. I mean, it's actually, she's seaworthy.
Yeah.
I don't know if she'd actually stand up to a battle today.
Well, that would be a little rough. That could be bad.
Times have changed. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It is a good point, and that's one of those things where we, just depending on who's making the claim, they can make the claim one way or the other. But yeah, the Constitution is a younger ship, but she is the oldest commissioned warship still afloat, still actually on the water. But the Victory is kind of a fantastic ship. And I again, it was one of these personal indulgences that I get to make during trivia, because I remember very well visiting the Victory, and I have a little souvenir that is a piece of wooden deck that during the restoration, some of the pieces that weren't being reused, you could buy that, and then I had a pewter model of the Victory on it. So I remember it very well from my childhood visiting that ship. Now, of course, the other thing that Elementary Dear Data references very heavily, plays upon and centers around very heavily, is the Sherlock Holmes stories by Arthur Conan Doyle. And there were multiple of his short stories referenced in this show. In particular, the final problem introduced the character of Moriarty, and it was Doyle's, I found this so interesting, his fourth favorite of his Holmes stories. He was kind of particular,
How long is that list?
12.
He made a list of his 12 favorite, or there are only 12? Really?
No, he made a list of his 12 favorite.
That's awesome.
And the final problem was his fourth favorite.
When we're done in 13 years, we should make a list of our 17 favorite mission logs.
Oh, I think that's good. Yeah, good idea.
Or maybe the 23.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
why not?
Some number.
Yeah. Now, Holmes was supposed to be dead in the final problem. Why not? It's final, right? And it just comes down to Doyle being tired of writing about Sherlock Holmes. But like another popular franchise we know, the letter writing campaign from desperate fans encouraged more. So the next story was a prequel. And in the next story, he was finally revived. You just can't keep a good character dead for long, as we know. With this particular episode of Star Trek, there was a copyright issue. The Doyle estate was flattered by the episode, but Paramount thought they were covered under parody. And the Doyle estate didn't see it that way. So they eventually negotiated for a fee to use the characters. And, once they got that settled, it means that we may just see Holmes again in Star Trek sometime way in the future. We'll have to wait and see. The sets for this episode cost so much that an entire day was actually cut out of the schedule in order to make up at least a part of that cost. This did not make director Rob Bowman very happy. But remember how I mentioned before, Ken, that they could kind of borrow from other episodes to then blow a lot of budget on a big episode. And in this episode, we had a lot of big practical sets and a lot of costuming.
They did save a little bit of money on one thing that I thought was actually, it was fascinating. Yeah, sometimes when you see the holodeck, start to fall apart, they'll sort of like green screen or overlay, that grid pattern, right? I'm pretty sure, and I didn't look this up, but just watching it a few times, they basically just projected the grid pattern onto the set that they had built.
Yeah.
Which was interesting because, I mean, it gave you the idea that, okay, well, it's still there, but it's starting to fall apart. But then also it had to save like a boatload of Quatlos.
Right.
Rather than, okay, well, let's paint that green because we're going to have it be in and be out.
Yeah.
And yeah. No, let's shine a light on that. Okay, okay, now flicker it. I think we got it.
It looked really good.
It was
really
great.
Convincing to do that kind of effect. Yeah,
absolutely.
Daniel Davis played Moriarty, and he has worked mostly in TV as a regular on such shows as Texas and The Nanny. I think, a lot of people would know him from that. And he had a recurring bit on Dynasty, and also he has just done a ton of voiceover work in animation and gaming. Alan Shearman played Lestrade, and also a very busy TV and voiceover actor, and kind of a weird science fiction crossover that he parodied science fiction in the movie 2001: A Space Travesty, starring Leslie Nielsen. He appeared in that, and he wrote it. So if you are so inclined to check out that movie, Dear Inspector Lestrade from this episode wrote that. And there's also an Ensign Clancy in here, played by some actress called Anne Elizabeth Ramsey.
No, you can call her Anne Elizabeth Ramsey if you want to. I call her the Elizabeth Ramsey.
Oh, okay. Okay,
it's actually Anne.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, no, that's like one of my total Hollywood crushes.
Wow.
I know, it's weird. I was a Mad About You fan, and she played sort of the quirky, wacky sister to the Helen Hunt character on Mad About You.
Right.
And if there's anybody I'm going for, it's the quirky, wacky one. And yeah, she was just great. She was also in that absolute travesty of a mockery of a movie, Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes.
Oh.
And a bunch of other stuff. I mean, she turns up. She's never been leading lady, I don't think. But yeah, I'm just always so happy when I see her. And fantastic too that we got this name character who I'm pretty sure is never going to be on the show again, but did not meet an untimely demise.
Yeah.
So
lucky, right?
Somebody should maybe write fan fiction about Ensign Clancy for me.
Well, they know how to reach us, Ken.
I guess they do.
Hey, and there was an additional scene near the end of this episode that got cut out, so we will talk about that later.
Today, Geordi gets to live vicariously through Holmes. Or is it Watson who lives vicariously through Data? Let's see if Ken and John can sort this out.
Prologue. The Enterprise is meeting with the Starship Victory, but the Enterprise is way early. Well, perhaps Data and Geordi could play on the holodeck. That almost never leads to trouble. Act 1. Data and Geordi will live one of Data's fantasies. According to Geordi, he will be Dr. Watson to Data's Sherlock Holmes. Data instructs the holodeck to choose at random a Sherlock Holmes adventure written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle for him to solve. After exploring 221B Baker Street, Inspector Lestrade comes to Holmes with a mystery, which Data as Holmes solves in 30 seconds or less. Out of nowhere, Geordi storms out of the holodeck saying he is done. In 10-4, Geordi explains his outburst. If Data knows what's going to happen, there's no mystery. No mystery, no game. No game, no fun. The mystery is what Geordi was looking forward to. Trying to solve the mystery was where the fun was supposed to be. Data doesn't get it, which causes an eavesdropping Dr. Pulaski to laugh. Of course Data doesn't get why trying to solve a mystery would be fun. Data doesn't get the idea of trying to solve, in her opinion. He knows or he doesn't, and he can't make the intuitive leaps required to solve. He doesn't get the soul. He learns by rote. He couldn't solve a Holmes mystery he hadn't read. Data agrees, but only because he's read them all. He does, however, have an idea. He'll challenge the holodeck to create a Holmes mystery he hasn't read and prove Pulaski wrong. And he'll have her along as a witness. Act 2. The computer has new instruction. Create a Sherlock Holmes type mystery, but not an actual according to Doyle mystery. But the computer's not so smart. Rather than writing a new story, it simply splices together elements of a couple of different Holmes stories. Data puts them together in under 35 seconds. Pulaski calls fraud. Data doesn't see why. He figured out a previously unwritten mystery through deductive reasoning. Pulaski's done talking to Data and addresses Geordi. Inspiration, original thought, all the true strengths of Holmes. It's not possible for our friend. Well, at least she calls Data friend, though she follows that by saying his circuits would simply melt if faced with the true mystery. Geordi seems to take Pulaski's assertions more personally than does Data. He calls for a computer arch, which one of the non-player characters, NPCs, on the holodeck seems to notice. Determined to prove Pulaski wrong, Geordi instructs the computer to, in the Holmesian style, create a mystery to confound Data with an opponent that has the ability to defeat him. Create an adversary capable of defeating Data. On the bridge, Lieutenant Worf detects an odd surge of power. It's gone now. Probably nothing. The NPC that had been clocking Geordi feels strange, like a new man. He saw Geordi call for the Arch and, calling for the Arch works for him too. Accidentally asking what it is, the computer tells the NPC, one Professor Moriarty, that the Arch gives him computer control. Does he want to give commands? Not now. He needs some information. Elsewhere, Holmes and Watson are waiting for a mystery. A scream, and they found it. Pulaski is gone. Data Holmes deduces that she's been abducted. Act 3. In pursuit of Pulaski and her captors, Data talks Geordi through how he figured out what was going on. Bottom line, he figured it out. It's not pieces and parts of another Holmes story. The holodeck tries to distract Data with a murder, but that's not the mystery he's there to solve. Geordi tries to solve the murder. Data says he's wrong. He solves it, but again, that is not the mystery with which he is concerned. He spots Moriarty clocking them and follows. He also recognizes Moriarty as Moriarty. Geordi is excited. He finally gets that Data doesn't know what's going to happen next. After a bit of poking around, Data and Geordi find the secret lair of Moriarty. He welcomes Holmes, but not Holmes. And Watson, but not Watson. Geordi's confused that Moriarty knows that they are not who they're supposed to be. Meanwhile, Data has lost a bit of his playfulness. He asks where Dr. Pulaski is. Moriarty says she's there, and no, he's not hurt her. Though he will if he has to. No, she hasn't talked, though he's read much from her expressions and her silence. Here's the thing. I'm less interested in that than I am what's going on. I know you're not Holmes and Watson. I know there's a great power called computer, wiser than the Oracle at Delphi. My mind is so big and on the verge of getting bigger. Moriarty then calls for the Arch to prove his point. Also, it described for me this. Can you tell me about this? Moriarty hands Data a piece of paper, which freaks Data out. He leaves Moriarty's lair with Geordi following quickly behind. Calling for an exit, Data tells the computer to shut down the holodeck. It tells him that access is denied. Override protocol has been initiated. Data says they have to see the captain. Data finally shows Geordi the piece of paper, which freaks Geordi out. Moriarty has drawn a picture of the Enterprise. Also, Moriarty has control of the holodeck, which means he has control of the computer. And Dr. Pulaski is in grave danger. Act 4. In the captain's ready room, Picard is looking at Moriarty's drawing of the Enterprise. He asks the computer who initiated the holodeck's override protocol. The computer says it was Geordi. Geordi doesn't think so. Walking through everything that happened for Picard, though, they hit on the problem. Geordi didn't tell the computer to come up with an opponent that could beat Sherlock Holmes. He told the computer to come up with an opponent that could beat Data. Picard says a dirty word. And that's before he knew Moriarty had access to the ship's computer. So he can learn all sorts of things given time. Worf says he could lead an extraction team to the holodeck to get Dr. Pulaski, though Data says that would probably put her in more danger, because the mortality failsafe has probably been overridden as well. The computer confirms that Pulaski is fine right now, though. Riker asks about sort of physically scrubbing the holodeck. Geordi says he could do it, but it would also physically scrub Pulaski, like rub her out. To give you an idea of how serious this is getting, Troy is beginning to sense Moriarty. To put a point on how serious it's getting, that violent shaking felt all over the Enterprise was control of the ship being transferred briefly to Holodeck 2, home of Moriarty. Speaking of Moriarty, he and Dr. Pulaski are having scones and tea, and a pleasant conversation. In fact, he's pleased that she's pleased, which they both find odd. So, is it true we're on a spaceship? Pulaski says she doesn't know what he's talking about. He shows her that he knows about the computer and can call for an Arch. He can't quite get control of everything, but he's working on it. Pulaski keeps playing dumb, but Moriarty's not buying. Fine then. She'd like to go now, please. Yeah, says Moriarty, that would be cool, but we need to wait here for Captain Jean-Luc Picard. He'll be coming for you. Moriarty is correct, of course. Picard and Data are on their way. Act 5. Holographic London is falling down, seemingly coming apart as Moriarty tries to alter the program. After nearly getting killed by a mugger, Picard and Data make their way to Moriarty's lair. Pulaski says she's fine, except for being crammed full of crumpets. Moriarty says he's civilized but serious, and gives the Enterprise another good shake to prove it. Picard lays it on the table for Moriarty. He was made to defeat Holmes. Win or lose, when the game is over, it's over. Moriarty will cease to be. Yay, says Data Holmes. You win! Moriarty says, it's more than that now, Data. Oh yeah, I called you Data. I'm awake now. I understand. I'm conscious. I can wreck this ship. I have power. What do you want? Asked Picard. The same thing you want. To continue to exist. Moriarty gets that he's a holographic image and that he cannot leave the holodeck. But he wants to. He's not the bad guy Geordi created. He thinks, therefore he is. He is alive. But Picard makes him understand. There's nothing they can do. Moriarty gets it. He thanks Pulaski for her company. He calls for the Arch. He cancels the override protocol and tells Picard and his people that they are free to go. Picard tells Moriarty that they will save him, save his program, and hopefully bring him back when he can leave the holodeck. The end.
Well done! You got a crumpet!
Yeah, they switched from scones to crumpets. I will tell you, have you ever had a crumpet?
Oh, sure, I love a crumpet.
Okay, see, I actually have crumpets rather regularly.
Yeah.
Now, given my choice of the two, like which am I going to be stuffed with? Mm-hmm. Scones every day.
Yeah.
The problem is scones are fattening.
Yeah.
Crumpets are actually, they're actually sort of a light breakfast fare or a light snacking fare.
But if you take that crumpet and you slather it in butter and jam, as I do...
Well, don't slather it.
Yeah. I love a crumpet. They're kind of spongy, and you can get them kind of crisp on the outside. A crumpet is a great thing.
The weird thing is you say crumpet, and it's like, oh, you're highfalutin and hoity-toity. But, if you say what it actually is, they're griddle cakes. But if you say griddle cake, then, you expect people to kick off their shoes and... You hear the banjo playing Deliverance in the background, because griddle cake sounds, like totally plebeian.
That's where you and I are from. That's our people.
That's true. That's true. So you say griddle cake, and I know exactly what you're talking about. You say crumpet, and but they're the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Epicureans today. We'll be back after this.
So, first of all, I am surprised that nobody on board just rolled their eyes. Oh, the holodeck again. Like, we have to have that moment in the conference room. We got to explain it's broken again. It's hurt or is about to hurt somebody again. And Captain Picard just doesn't put up police tape around every holodeck.
Oh, no. He's looking for an excuse. He's looking for an excuse to play dress up. Seriously, when they figure out what's going on, and Picard, because there's been no message from Moriarty that he wants to talk to the captain or anything, right? There are any number of people, especially if you think the mortality fail-safes are done, there's any number of people that you should send in. Hey, how about sending in the uber-feeling Troy? That might be a good person to go in. Or how about the second in command, so that we leave, command. Well, where do we want to leave him? How about in command? But I mean, the second he hears his thing in the holodeck, oh, what am I dressing up as this week? Okay.
Yeah, there was also that moment in the back of Picard's head where he thought, and it's only Dr. Pulaski who's trapped in the holodeck, and she doesn't have any family on board. Okay,
stop that. He would never leave a doctor behind.
No, he wouldn't. So, a couple of other things. Picard. Not only is he, like you said, he's sort of champing at the bit to get in, but I mean, he's a really good sport about it all. Like, he could have legitimately just thrown a ton of security crew in there. Yes. But he's ready to get into costume. He's like, no, I'll go down there and I'm going to help solve this problem. But first, how about a costume?
Yes, because what's his name? Data says, I'll get in my uniform. And Picard's like, no, mister. I'm going to wardrobe. Can I go ahead and just, this is that thing that we always hate when people do it. And the answer to the question is because then the episode would have been shorter and we wouldn't gotten to the meat of it. But could they not lock a transporter onto Pulaski?
Right. Yeah.
That's my question, because they're immediately thinking, okay, well, how do we beat this guy? I'm like, what do you care about beating this guy? If you had somebody down on the planet and they had a gun aimed at Pulaski,
right,
you would lock in and beam her out.
Right.
But inside the ship, oh, no, that's far too close.
Here's the problem with you even bringing that up, because we'll get 50 emails saying, well, there's a thing and the holodeck does this and it can't do that and you can't beam it out because, but yes, I get what you mean.
Because, then here's the other question. Mm-hmm. Why not just beam Moriarty out? If we're assuming that you're not actually taking the exact same matter and moving it from point A to point B, but you're taking matter and taking it apart and then reconstructing it someplace else, out of other matter,
right?
Beam him out.
Well, we do have listeners saying, but you're taking apart matter and you're moving that matter and reconstructing that matter.
Yeah, but I don't think you are, because that's what the pattern buffer has always proved to us, right?
Yeah.
It's just a pattern. You're just reconstructing a pattern.
Right.
I'm just.
I know. I know. I'd say, hey, direct all emails. But the other thing that you could have expected is a shot of Geordi and Wesley, who is not in this episode, in the hallway outside the holodeck, using the little holodeck tool thing that they used to fix the holodeck the last time.
Yes, that's true.
I'm just going to dig through and I'm going to look for the thing that makes Moriarty bad or makes him able to take over the arch and take that thing out. Yeah. So now we can control the arch. But we can't do that because this is not that episode.
No, it is not.
No. Interesting. You mentioned that Picard swears in French.
Said a dirty word, yeah. Oh, I didn't say it was in French, but it was.
Yeah, it was in French. And this is the second time now that he's done that.
Yes.
And it's interesting to me that sometimes Picard is French and sometimes he's English.
Yes.
And so he says the French word, and we have heard him talk about France before, and he spent time in Paris on the holodeck before.
Yeah.
But boy, is he just right at home in Old London.
Yes.
He even knows the folklore of Old London. And I the only answer is it really is just that matter of the UK expanding and... the empire somehow absorbed France in the future. There is no, as of the recording now, there is no more British Empire.
Yeah.
You have England, you have the UK, you have England, Wales, part of Ireland and Scotland. Mm-hmm. We almost didn't have Scotland, But now we just have to assume in the future, let's just take France back.
Oh, come on. It's okay. Here's the thing. So you're talking about the tuppence, right?
Well, yeah, that, and he knows he walks into that and he's like a guy who went back home for the holidays.
Yeah.
He's like, he knows the custom. He's sort of fascinated by it all, which who wouldn't be?
I'm pretty sure it's because Picard likes to play dress up.
Well, he does. We know that. Yeah.
If you're talking though about the tuppence thing, that's just. Yeah. I mean, we have the same thing here in the States. See a penny, pick it up all day long, you'll have good luck. That's pretty much it. I'm guessing in just about every culture, finding a coin on the ground is good luck.
Hey, they don't even know what money is. If you ask some of us,
that's true. That's true. So, 2 pence.
Yeah,
they
don't even know what countries are. If you ask some of them,
that's true.
So yeah,
if you talk about being, is it the smoke? Is that what one of the nicknames for London? Right?
Was it?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I believe it is. If I'm wrong, somebody will write in and say. But if you'd started talking about being in the smoke, I would have been like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, he's not French.
Right. But it is fun though that his nationality sort of has morphed a little bit because everybody mentions, he's the French captain with the English Shakespearean accent, and now he gets to just sort of let his cultural identity slide a little bit. So I'm just going to say that, that's what happened. I'm going to say the British Empire finally became an empire again.
I don't know. You could also say, though, it's just, the EU thing finally took.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. The Brits were the last holdout.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah. I mentioned that there was a bit of trivia that I wanted to save.
Yes.
Because it is sort of integral to the plot here and then to what happens at the end of the story. So we have a piece of paper, Ken, created in the holodeck and leaving the holodeck.
I'm glad you're talking about this because I actually had a note on it.
Yeah.
Now,
okay, good.
Okay, here's the thing, though. We know that that kind of thing can happen because did Picard get hit by a snowball?
Yeah.
Coming out of the holodeck.
He sure did.
So little bits of matter can go. If you're Cyrus Red Block?
Yep. Not Red Jack.
Is that really his name, Red Block? Cyrus Red Block? Really?
I'm impressed.
I need $5 from you next time we see each other. Just for getting that. It doesn't have to be a real $5. You want to draw a picture of it, that would actually be apropos for the discussion that we're having here.
That'd be perfect, yeah.
So if you're a Cyrus Red Block, you can't leave the holodeck. And certainly if you're a Moriarty, you can't leave the holodeck. But if you're a snowball or a piece of paper, you apparently can.
Aha. But there was an alternate ending. What? Okay, so, here's the thing. So we have a piece of paper created in the holodeck and it leaves the holodeck.
Yes.
And we know that the fail-safes aren't working.
Right.
So Picard actually, in this alternate version, with the scene missing, Picard assumes that Moriarty can leave the holodeck, unlike the guys from The Big Goodbye. And he tricks Moriarty. So that conversation where Picard basically says, look, if you leave, you won't exist anymore because this is a holodeck and you're a creation and blah, blah, blah. The next scene after that would have been Picard saying, well, look, this piece of paper proves that is wrong. Moriarty could have left because here are these things that exist outside the holodeck. Even though I know what you're going to say, but we had a snowball and a thing and I hit him in the face and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, in this episode, had that dialogue stayed behind, it would have meant that Picard actually tricked Moriarty. He lied to Moriarty about his existence beyond the holodeck. And Gene and others in the staff nixed that scene because they thought it would have made Picard look like a liar, which he would have been. Absolutely. And they didn't want that for Picard.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Like, so you know how Brazil ends differently on television than it actually ended in the movies, or how there are like 27 different endings for Blade Runner, I think.
Right. Yeah.
There are some endings that completely change the meaning of the episode and the import of the episode.
Yeah,
that ending would have killed this episode in a lot of ways. So good on them for showing that the door.
With his newfound goodness, I think Moriarty should go into music. I've written his first song for him. It goes like this. Moriarty, I like to party, I don't cause trouble, I don't bother nobody, I'm just some evil genius on the mic, and when I rock up on the mic, I rock the mic, right?
So every now and then, Geordi will pop out with something weird. Like, somebody mentioned last week the whole thing about when they thought they had destroyed the Romulan ship, and Geordi was like, yeah, right? That was kind of weird.
Yeah.
Inoffensive. Weird, but not offensive. Geordi offended me a couple of times in this episode.
Ken.
I know. I actually have greater issue with him in this episode than I think I do any other character. And it's not like I'm looking to square off with a character in each episode. But there were things that happened that I was like, I don't know how I like that, or I don't know how I feel about that. It's human nature to love what we don't have, says Geordi. I don't like it. That may be true. I don't know if that's true or not, but you know, you've got this android sitting there who all he ever wants to do is be a real live boy.
Right.
And to tell him, well, you know, then you're closer than you're ever going to be because you're never going to get that thing. And the most human thing is to want what you don't have, or to love what you don't have. And this goes honestly back to a discussion that we've had 1 billion times.
Yeah.
Maybe a few less than 1 billion. It only feels like 1 billion.
Right.
I really did not like his summation of, that's being human. Yeah, there's something you want. Man, that's probably the best thing. Just stay in that state of wanting it as opposed to actually, having it. Bothered me.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
I'm positive that it did. Yes.
Now, I will say I was also offended by Geordi's response in Act 1 to Data solving the mystery that was set before him. Data, who is Data, right?
Yeah.
Geordi says it is one of Data's dreams to be Sherlock Holmes. Geordi says that. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if that's actually one of Data's dreams or not, and certainly Data seems to be having a good time, but how do we know Data's just not doing what was expected of him by Geordi? Geordi gets really upset that it wasn't as much fun for Geordi as Geordi thought it was going to be. And he storms off like... Oh, he storms off in honestly a fairly petulant way. And later he says he's not mad at Data about it. But I'm trying to figure out like if any part of this actually had anything to do with Data at all as far as Geordi was concerned. And I mentioned in the recap when Pulaski's like, you're just, zeros and ones, as if she's not. You're just zeros and ones and you'll never get. And, the more that happens, Data's like, I don't think so. And she's like, well, no, but it's true. And he's like, no, but I disagree. Geordi, on the other hand, is about to pop a vein. I mean, he is just so angry theoretically on Data's behalf, but it felt like Geordi needed to spend a little bit more time with Geordi in this episode, because of course Data is going to solve the Holmes mystery immediately. He's read it, and it's not even a matter of, oh, how did that one go again? I can't remember. Well, of course he can, because he's Data.
Well, I'm much more on the same page with you on this criticism of Geordi here, right, for sure, because I thought his reaction was childish, and it just him storming off. It really... It didn't seem like him, because we see this friendship forming between him and Data, but also some understanding of what Data is like.
Yes.
So this is to be expected. And we'll get back to Pulaski. And again, I'm sure that for as long as we're covering season 2, there will be this constant conversation that I'm having with our listeners about the pros and cons of Pulaski. Mm-hmm. But Pulaski seems to have a much more reasoned approach to the whole thing. She's sort of saying to Geordi, well, yeah, of course, you're trying to make Data be something that he is not. This is how Data is programmed. So let's test this. Let's check it out. Let's not just storm off and pout in our room.
Yeah, the weird thing is, I mean, Pulaski definitely seems to be underselling Data. Although what's interesting is she's not proven wrong by the end of this episode.
Yes, I agree with you there. Yeah.
She seems to be underselling Data quite a bit. Geordi, on the other hand, is overselling Data quite a bit. He's projecting a bit, it seems to me, or maybe he's trying to push Data further along than Data is. Yeah. But he gets frustrated when Data is who Data is as opposed to who Geordi wants him to be.
Yeah.
Which struck me as kind of weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. That's exactly the right word for it. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome. And,
you validate me, and I appreciate that. I get money off for parking for this show, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Right.
We got a great tweet from one of our listeners, Mark, who said, I love this. He said, we went from the epistemological last week and Where Silence Has Lease to the ontological this week with Elementary Dear Data. And I thought, man, that is just a mouthful to cover in less than 140 characters. So good job, Mark, on fitting a whole philosophical can of worms into a single tweet. But let's talk about that just a little bit, because essentially last week we were dealing with the idea of how we know what, with Nagila messing up our perception of what it means to know something. Mm-hmm. He's constantly resetting our perceptions. So how do we know that we know things, especially with a guy like Nagila messing us up, purposely messing us up? And this week we're taking a look at what exists in the world, what actually exists and what is existence from our perspective and from Moriarty's perspective. And this is sort of the ontological crisis for Moriarty. How can he know the nature of the universe and what will happen to him if his program is halted or terminated? We talked about that in The Big Goodbye, because it was just that one line from Dixon Hill's friend saying, so look, I got a wife and kids back home. What happens to me? What happens to them? Mm-hmm. Which was pretty profound for an episode that was just like, hey, let's go have a good time in the 1940s.
Right.
And here we have it again, something pretty profound for, hey, let's go have a good time in 19th century London. So it was a pretty great moment. And an episode that's full of great moments. You know, this whole thing is one of those like late night mind. How have we said it before, Ken? A mind fornication, mind
bleepery, I believe.
Mind bleepery, mind bendery, and it's sort of like, hey man, what if we're all just hooked up to the Matrix? We'd never know, and you could continue to go down that rabbit hole, but I think at some point you have to decide on a certain set of facts in order to do any kind of study of the world around you. Because that whole thing is a non-falsifiable proposition. What's interesting, though, is that from Moriarty's perspective, this is actually a falsifiable proposition because he's got the arch and he's got these strangers who show up and you could just have the computer create a holographic object or allow him to walk out into the hallway or maybe take another object out into the hallway that could disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, because you just hit on something. Why didn't they just, make a recreation of the rest of the Enterprise for him to walk around in?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, then you're using a lot of energy and data to do that. Not data, but data from the computer to do that.
Data, Bobby. Go ahead. Well, no, you're not using any more than you're using to create old, foggy London town, though.
Right, but I imagine to keep it running all the time.
Well, no, but I mean, just to give him an idea.
Oh, just for that moment.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, why not let him see something outside of what he knows? He knows that there's more than he's seen, so why not let him see what it's like?
But maybe we don't trust Moriarty anymore, and we just think, okay, the more information we give him. Like, remember what happened when we let, Khan or Gary Mitchell read all the technical readouts from the
Klingons how to take over the battle bridge?
See, exactly. You let him do that, you know?
Give him an example, though. Give him a taste. Take him to Deep Space 86.
You could literally have the computer, if the fail-safes are off and if control is returned, you literally have the computer dematerialize and rematerialize Moriarty 5 feet away. Okay. And Picard can say, like, look what I just did. I can tell the computer to do that to you.
I don't see why that's any fun, though. No, I'm saying why not? I mean, once they make peace with Moriarty at the end of it, once we know that Moriarty is no longer going to try to kill them, why not give him a reward instead of the promise of maybe someday?
Well, maybe we don't get maybe we don't know that piece is a lasting piece. I mean, he is Moriarty after all.
We know that we can now turn him off. Don't even do what he was designed for thing, though, because he beats his programming. He beats what's... I'm sorry, am I skipping ahead?
Well, no, I don't think... Well, not really, because here's, I guess, sort of the question about Moriarty then. I mean, we get this peek into what could be a really serious power and problem with the Enterprise computer. It's creating self-aware characters left and right, or at least characters that act self-aware. And at that point, what's the difference anyway?
Yeah.
No one programmed the Enterprise computer from the last time with some kind of laws of robotics to keep it from killing.
You know what this episode reminded me of?
What's that?
Which is the cartoon where Kirk is walking around with Kirk as a jerk.
The Practical Joker.
The Practical Joker.
Yeah.
Remember that I sort of felt like we had killed the computer at that point. When the computer, when they went through whatever it was they went through in the Practical Joker, right? Suddenly the computer is self-aware, it seems, and it's playing all these pranks.
Yeah.
And then I believe when they went back through whatever it was that changed the computer back, did it not say it's not fair?
Right.
The computer was awake. And the thing is, most adults weren't at 8:30 on a Saturday morning. And, the kids they were playing to were kids. So you didn't really have the whole I think, therefore I am thing. But that computer was thinking. Sadly, it wasn't necessarily thinking for good, but it was thinking. Right. And then they just shut it down. During when you and I have been talking about this, I've added a new note to our notes.
Oh, dear.
When Picard makes his deal with Moriarty, is Picard on some level making a deal with the Enterprise computer? Because that is who he is talking to.
That's yes. See, you got to exactly what I was thinking, and what really has me concerned and weirded out by this episode. So, okay, the computer in the guise of the holodeck can make fake objects. It can make objects that are holographic representations that don't actually exist anywhere other than the holodeck. You take it outside, it disappears. But it can also create real life objects like the replicator. We've already said that it's replicator-ish technology at work here as well. You could eat something on the holodeck, presumably. Bullets in the holodeck.
Dr. Pulaski was full of crumpets.
She was full of crumpets. You've got a gun that went off and nearly killed that poor historian who we've never seen again.
Yeah.
In The Big Goodbye. So you have the holodeck making things that are actual objects. And in this case, I ask myself, did the computer create a living, breathing, flesh and blood human? And even if he was or was not in some respect, did he have a link up to the ship's computer? So was the computer the one asking about mortality?
Right.
Yes.
The computer was waking up.
Yeah.
I mean, now the thing is, the computer is still a computer. And so it's almost like it was running a conscious subroutine in a way, right? Because it's running life support, it's running navigation, it's running everything. Heck, we know there are at least 4 holodecks. So on 3 other holodecks, there might just be, another ski weekend for Wesley or, something.
Right.
Somebody might be off on some holodeck being a merry man. It's very tough to say what's going on, all over the ship. And yet it does have this little subroutine of awareness, apparently. Now, you, of course, do bring up the whole, except we do know that this is awareness because Troy's feeling it. I mean, you're right, because you can do, I mean, you do the whole Turing test thing, or you do, or you talk about Eliza. You can tricking a person into thinking that something is smart, depending on the level of the person, is not the most difficult thing in the world to do. I can't, I wouldn't be able to build a program that could do it, but people have built programs that will, convince the average Joe, I would say. When it reaches the level, though, that a betazoid's like, whoa, are there any other betazoids around? Okay, do you feel that? Do you feel that? That's like an emerging consciousness happening somewhere on this ship. And
that's kind of a very quick moment with Deanna.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you pointed it out in the recap, because I feel like that's profound.
Yes.
About what's happening on the holodeck.
Yeah, something's coming alive down there. And then, then the question is, so if that is just a subroutine of the computer, does not mean that the Enterprise computer is coming alive. Thus, when Picard makes the deal with the computer, is he basically just saying, look, I get that there is more here than I know, and I'm going to work on it, and let's table this for now, but we'll see if we can maybe do something about it later.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what makes me then wonder about Moriarty. I mean, Moriarty is created as a bad guy because Moriarty was a bad guy in the Sherlock Holmes books. But Moriarty also, in this guise, has to be a thing to be a foil for Data. So I still do wonder, what are his intentions at the end? Or has the rug just been so thoroughly pulled out from under this Moriarty, who is Moriarty as the ship's computer, or the ship's computer as Moriarty,
right?
Going through this existential crisis, Well, so we can ask just about Moriarty. Okay, was Moriarty bad because he didn't have anything to do in the Sherlock Holmes novels other than be bad? So would he fare better in a world where he can ponder the big questions, like, why am I a holographic creation on a starship in the future?
Right.
But then that's the computer asking, why am I a computer on the starship in the future?
Well, I think you have to separate those things, right? I mean, when you ask why Moriarty is bad in the Sherlock Holmes stories, it's because Sir Arthur Conan Doyle needed a bad guy for the Sherlock Holmes stories. I mean, there is nothing more than Moriarty on the page in the real world, because in the real world, he is just words on a page. Right. And played by various actors, things like that.
Yeah.
Now, once you actually build a program to start being Moriarty, that actually. So I was watching an episode of Democracy Now! Recently, as we listen to this, as people, as we talk about it, as people listen to it, who knows how long ago, but you can never go back and find it. Johann Hari is the author of a book called Chasing the Scream. And he was telling this fascinating story about experiments run by a professor by the name of Bruce Alexander, who works out of Vancouver. And this gets a little convoluted, but stick with me.
Okay.
So there was a mid-20th century experiment where they were testing the addictive properties of, I don't remember if it was heroin or cocaine, right? What they would do is they would put a rat in a cage and they would put 2 water bottles in. And one of the water bottles had water and the other one had water laced with either heroin or cocaine. Invariably, the rat would go for the one with the heroin or the cocaine, and it would either stay stoned or it would OD, right? So it would die. And people said, aha, this proves the addictive nature of heroin and cocaine, and this proves that they're terrible and they're addictive and all that stuff. And certainly I'm not advocating for heroin or cocaine. But Alexander, about 20 years later, or several years later, said, well, hold on a second. We've put this rat in a cage with 2 water bottles and nothing to do. So he ran the test again, except this time he had the water bottle with the heroin, the water bottle with just the water, and then what this Hari guy referred to as Rat Park. So it was like a playground, and there were toys, and there were other rats, and there was all sorts of stuff. And what they found out was the rat, generally speaking, never OD'd. The rats never OD'd, and they rarely actually used the drug water because there was something else to do. Now, this guy was actually, his book, Chasing the Scream, is actually about the war on drugs and how it's been misguided and how, we should whatever. And that's a whole different politic thing. What I found most fascinating was if you give people options, if you give people more, if you don't just treat people like you expect them to be, this thing, if you give them something to do, basically, then they might surprise you. And that's what happened with Moriarty here. He actually says it. I was a bad guy, but I am changed. Well, what changed him? He was no longer expected to be the bad guy. He was not walking around with twirling the mustache and my goal is to get Holmes, because the second he wakes up, he's like, I could get Holmes, I guess. Yeah, I'm smart. I could get him, but wow, what's outside? And what is outside anyway? It's like that whale from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, It's a fascinating idea that once you take him, once you remove the expectation of, you're a bad guy, once you take him out of that, then he's not necessarily going to be a bad guy. He's actually puzzled by the fact that Pulaski is enjoying the scones. And he's like, wow, that makes me feel good, which is kind of a nutty idea. I don't know. I know that was a lot of other stuff there, but I just love the idea that, if you give something people besides what you expect them to be, if you can give them even just a little bit more, they may actually surprise and not be that thing that you expect.
I think I might be able to buy that about this version of Moriarty, because again, his whole world has just been completely changed.
Right.
Everything that is the context of his world is just gone. He's got to relearn all of that. And also he's faced with the tremendous power of the people around him and the technology around him that he simply doesn't understand. But you have to temper all of that with the knowledge that this is also the computer talking through him. So the computer, which we assume that if it is something on the verge of being self-aware, is also hopefully more benevolent than this literary character that is just designed solely to go after the good guy and try to kill him.
Fingers crossed.
Forgive me if I seem a bit out of sorts today. I'm just waking up.
So the episode in question, Elementary, Dear Data, which is actually said, name check in the episode. They say Elementary, Dear Data, so hope you took a shot when you did. This is the part of the show where we ask the questions, about the messages, morals, meanings, does the whole episode hold up, all that stuff. Mr. John Champion, does Elementary, Dear Data hold up as far as you're concerned?
By the way, before I get to that...
What? I asked you a question, mister. All right, go ahead. Before you get to that...
And it's too bad that we don't have Curtis Armstrong, our resident Sherlock Holmes superfan. But I believe that I read that Elementary, My Dear Watson, or Elementary, Dear Watson, was actually created for the Sherlock Holmes films, that it wasn't actually in the books.
Really?
So, yeah. But I'm not quite the super fan of Sherlock Holmes as I am for things like Star Trek, maybe. So I'm not entirely sure on that one. But does the episode hold up? Well, Ken, I have to tell you that when we got to this episode, I knew that it would spark a big conversation, because I just knew that there are ideas in here that you and I both find very intriguing. And I'm glad to say that upon watching it for our show, which is, I can't even remember how many times it is that I watched it, even though that you sit there and kind of pick apart the plot holes, and then I got to throw you kind of the monkey wrench of, well, there would have been this other way to end it and this change for the character. I think it holds up really quite beautifully. It's full of tension, and we get to play with this technology again that we know is going to come back again, because I think they've all decided that we all love a good holodeck story at this point, and this is so early in the run for next gen. I think it holds up really nicely. Now, the things that I like here, I'm going to go back to Dr. Pulaski. This is the kind of thing that I like to see Dr. Pulaski doing. And again, I'm not defending the behavior by saying she's super nice about it or anything. She's certainly rude, and she's certainly kind of needling both Data and La Forge by her behavior. But the thing that's interesting about it is that she's responding to, as we say, manufactured intelligence the way that many of us probably would. She's putting Data to the test to see the limits of his creative ability. This is fascinating. That here's, again, what we said a couple of episodes ago, this is essentially a toaster to her. But she's going to play along with the game to see how this works. And I think that's kind of a cool thing, even if we might think that her attitude is a little unevolved about it. Now, I think that you and I are going to both talk about the ending, because I think we both had a similar thought about the very end of the episode. So before we both get to that, Ken, what do you think about the episode holding up as a production, as a piece of Star Trek?
Oh, yeah, I think it's fantastic. The mind bleepery part of it, what's interesting is you could certainly sit there in 1989 when this
88. 88, yeah.
You could definitely sit there in 1988 and go, oh, yeah, well, one day we'll have to face those questions. And, you would say that in 88. I have no idea what the future is facing right now, but we are certainly closer to needing to face those questions today than we were then. And so that actually makes it kind of a really fascinating idea. But I mean, even if we were like 50, 60, 70 years away from that, and maybe we are 50, 60, 70 years away from that, who knows how soon we're going to have to answer those questions. It's just a great bit of mind bleepery. It's absolutely fantastic. The acting is, Lestrade's over the top, but Lestrade's also on screen for maybe 45 seconds.
Right.
Data, I actually found myself a tiny bit annoyed at how campy Spiner was when he was doing the Sherlock voice and the Sherlock cadence and all of that. Although it pays off beautifully when they finally get to Moriarty and Data realizes, oh, we're not playing. He's not playing anymore. Moriarty's still talking like Moriarty. Occasionally, Geordi's still doing a little bit of the Watson whatever, and Data's just like, we need to move along, and so even his over the top performance ends up serving the episode well, because then when he stops being over the top, you're like, oh, this is real, or this is serious anyway. Yes, not surprising that it was nominated for awards for the art direction, because that was very well done, down to the... I love the fact that when Moriarty realizes he can control the ship, he can still only control it the way he understands controlling things, so he's basically got a steampunk operation.
I love that.
For the Enterprise. It's like, I can control this ship, but that would obviously require a boiler and a giant lever and some gauges.
Right.
And pretty much what he can do is he can make the ship shimmy, like for a second, and that's about it. So there's a lot of stuff as far as, I would say this episode way holds up. Oh, plus it's got my girlfriend in the first 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Anne Ramsey. Not that one. The other one.
Not that one, the other. Yeah. And Elizabeth Ramsey.
And the Anne Elizabeth Ramsey would be the way to say it.
Right. There's another thing that we didn't really hit upon, but we talked about it before when we talked about The Big Goodbye. There's something kind of cool here about this glimpse into how people in the 24th century, according to Star Trek, play. How they escape and have fun, whether it's Geordi building a model or going to a holodeck and putting on a costume and immersing oneself in a story. Mm-hmm. So instead of watching a movie we know that Picard reads books. But, again, are we back to this idea that this is gaming. This is a video game of the future. Mm-hmm. And you kind of have to be a good actor to do it. Sometimes the holodeck will call you out on that. Sometimes it won't, if it sees you in the right costume or the wrong costume for the period, or interacting correctly or incorrectly. Again, I go back to that idea that we had in The Big Goodbye, that the computer is sort of anticipating, but also messing with you a little bit in that respect. It just happens that in this one, because everything has gone haywire, then they are that much more immersed in the story. So I found all of that to just be a great sort of look at what do we do when we need a little escape from our incredible technology. Well, we get to use that technology for even more interesting and complex escape. like if you were on, say, Talos 4, We
use the technology to go back to simpler times, as Mr. La Forge, says everybody wants. What about the messages?
Well, I think that's kind of a tough one, because, again, this episode is about play, and it's about having fun, and it's about testing data. Mm-hmm. But you said early on, and I said that I agree with you, that data fails the test.
No, I didn't say data fails the test. I said she didn't prove it.
Oh, okay. Well, all right.
I don't know the data failed the test. Honestly, I find her logic flawed, because she says Data doesn't have a soul, or he doesn't get the soul. I think I've talked about this here before. I mean, she is bothered by the fact that all Data is response to input, right? Right. So she. And I know she has this idea that she's got some ineffable something, and I know a lot of people listening to this have that idea too, and my personal feeling has always been we just don't have any idea how many inputs we've received. Yeah. But we're responding to our inputs. I mean, we are. And there may also be a soul, and bully, if there is. That's fantastic. I'm not saying there's not necessarily. I'm just saying she doesn't prove anything, and the soul of her argument is, because he's responding to zeros and ones. Well, so is she. They're just read differently.
Yeah, but she's checking out his ability to think abstractly. The original test where he's sort of in there and he can pick apart what the mystery is because he's already read it and he's sort of already planning ahead. But, I mean, look at the end. It takes Captain Picard to come in and kind of pull a Kirk. He's got to talk down the computer, this time in the guise of Moriarty, but he's really talking down the computer. Mm-hmm. And then we're left with a little bit of sympathy for this Moriarty/computer creation. Data is really just relegated to standing in the corner while Picard does all the work.
Yeah, but that could honestly be, that could just be org chart stuff. I mean, once Data realizes that the ship is in danger, then he has to go to the captain. I mean, that's because that is above his pay grade and that's above his rank. If he knows that what he does on the holodeck could literally get the ship destroyed, that is not a decision that he is able to make unless Picard and Riker are off the ship. In which case, I mean, then command does actually fall to him, right? Is he third or fourth in command? I can't remember.
He's probably
third or fourth in command.
Yeah,
right?
somewhere around there. Yeah.
So he's not far from being able to make those decisions, but when he realizes that it's no longer a game, when he realizes that there's actual, that 1,000+ people, their lives are on the line potentially, he has to go to the captain at that point.
Interesting. Yeah, well, because see, I don't know if he knew that everybody was in danger at that point, that he couldn't have just stuck around a little bit to go,
Oh, I disagree.
I created this mess. I should clean it up.
No, Geordi created that mess, though. See, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Geordi is actually the only one who's testing data at this point. Pulaski is fine with her preconceived notions of data. And hopefully that will change. But once data fails, as far as she's concerned, fraud. You knew because it was part of this and part of this. Fraud. And Data's like, no, I know because of this. She stops talking to Data at that point. She turns to Geordi and she's like, see, your friend is just a bucket of bolts. That's all he is. And, I'm sorry for you, Geordi, not even addressing Data at all at that point, because there is no... Now, what's interesting is her time with Moriarty may actually end up softening her towards Data. Because she apologizes to him. She tells Moriarty, oh, listen, next time we see each other, I'm going to be old and time won't have passed for you. And he's like, but I'll still like you. Who knows? Maybe this will actually soften her towards Data somewhere on the way.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. See. So, is the message here that at least as far as Moriarty is concerned, that maybe he's really not that much of a bad guy. Maybe he was just having an existential crisis and didn't have enough to do when he was faced with Holmes? No,
the existential crisis is what makes him a good guy. I actually do like the idea of that message, honestly. I don't know if it's actually a message. It is just something that it made me think of. But, the second Moriarty gets taken out of his, well, you're the bad guy mold.
Yeah.
The second he has a chance to do something else, he does, which is kind of that's sort of a neat message. And then, of course, there's that awful thing that Geordi tells Data. Sorry. I don't know if that's a message or not, but it's one that I can't seem to escape when
I don't think that is an intended message of the show.
Really? Because
I know that
said
it stuck
the
out.
Line out loud.
That might be that's a Geordi message.
He
for
straightforward
Data.
Said the line out loud.
It's a Geordi message for Data. I think the played out message that we get to end the show with is that
yes.
Is that Moriarty gets to reassess. But again, we're left with this huge question about that being Moriarty reassessing or the computer becoming alive and potentially just killing the crew. I don't know. I don't know what that computer is going to do now. But that computer is seriously got a changed relationship with the crew, I would say, after this point.
Oh, I doubt it. Remember what happened after the Practical Joker? Nothing. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Picard may be going, I may one day have to have a talk with the computer. All right. Yeah. Maybe I'll have Data do that. That might be
right. There you go. Yeah. And then he puts everybody in danger again.
Yeah. That crazy robot.
Well, I would say that those messages, I would say that the show holds up. Overall, it's just so much fun. But there's a lot for your brain to chew on in this episode. And Ken, it's just like Star Trek keeps coming, I know. It's like we do one and then there's another one right around the corner for us. So we only have a week and then we meet the outrageous Okona.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages, by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. Next week, an episode that can't possibly be as cool as one about a computer gaining sentience. If you ask me. End transmission.